Welcome to a special video of Let's Go Indigo. I'm your host, Isaac Holtz, and on a good day, Indigo Ike. So today I'd like to give an overview of the stages that we've looked at in the normal videos, and you'll have seen me point out a picture like this. We talk about the colors a lot, and I use the shorthand because it's quick and easy, and sometimes not all of us have learned the shorthand. So I'm making this video today to go over this map, this picture of the stages. There are other aspects of integral theory. Integral theory, the one I ascribe to by Ken Wilber, is often called AQAL theory, AQAL. It stands for all quadrants, all levels, all lines, all states, all types. And I'd like to make a video for each one of those 5 components. And today we're talking about levels, which is this picture here. And that's mostly what the channel utilizes and aims to help educate and share and take a look at the world through the developmental lens of stages, is another word for levels. Waves. Waves is probably the most accurate description of these. Individuals don't always grow in a straight line. This shows the arrow of growth. And individuals can stop at any stage, and they can have parts of themselves at any of the earlier stages of where their leading edge is, so that their mind is green. They may have parts of themselves at amber, at red, and those can be healthy and they can be unhealthy. But if they have some green, they don't have the later stages. So that takes time, and what we call their structures is another word for that. And those structures, like train tracks, have to be laid down over time. So we're going to look at this a bit in detail. I'm going to focus, like I said, on the colors, but this map does show their words that are from different researchers, and we'll take a look at that briefly. So these other vertical lines here are from various researchers. This is a very, very new field of study in the history of humanity. For the first time, about 100 or so years ago, some researchers noticed patterns in how people grow up, and that's been refined, and there are various systems, but Ken Wilber has mapped them in using this image to show where Robert Keegan's first order, second order, third order, fourth order map up with spiral dynamics, and they were the original ones to use colors. They have words and colors, but they have beige, purple, red, blue, orange, green, yellow, turquoise. And so at one point, Ken took his AQAL model, and rather than using the spiral dynamics colors that were very popular in that space at the time, he felt the light spectrum was more useful and more accurate to use to shorthand these stages that are called by different names by different developmental models. Some people are familiar with Gene Gebser's work: archaic, magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, and they have an integral stage. There's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is more commonly known. Here there's Fowler's stages of faith. Lovinger, Cook, Greuter. Suzanne Cook Greuter is amazing in this space, and she uses her research to point out and has data for some of the more advanced stages. But we will look, just in general, this whole topic is what we would call a Teal. This doesn't really show up in any individual or group until they've reached a Teal stage. So this is fairly new, like I said, 100 years, but even just recently, noticing that the developmental stages have something beyond the data that was showing up with green, orange, amber. So we're going to look closer in on this, but again, this whole talk is, in a sense, coming from a teal altitude. That's another word we might use for these stages, levels, structures, waves. And again, even your leading edge as you grow, I kind of use my mouse to show a circular movement. It may go in waves. So you peak into green, you come back to your orange, you peak into, eventually you peak into teal, you come back into your green, you come back into your orange, and you're growing. So that's an overview of this. Let's talk about the early stage, the most basic stage, infrared. Sometimes you'll see the color crimson, but these are almost pre-colors, light spectrum colors stages. The other stages have sensory motor, survival, level 0 order, symbiotic, archaic, undifferentiated. And these all mean something once you kind of dive into this. But this level is the simple ones that you can think about are hunger, eating, surviving from just a food level. Temperature, whether it's too hot or too cold, your body is wanting to survive. Different people have different bounds for how far their body is willing to comfortably survive. And anything within the nervous system, anything to do with surviving. The next stage we call magenta, and it is also a very pre-personal stage. Often the perspectives that come from the stage are not noticed on the surface by most people. And the stages, it's called pre-operational, magic, animistic, kin spirits, first order, impulsive, magical. But this is a lot about magic, and it's largely mapped to the sexual realm, the dream realm, and these are, today's world is very popular to talk about attachment theory. I would place attachment, secure attachment, along with the insecure attachment modalities of things that go right or go wrong at these very early stages. The next stage we call red. Red is very power. Here this model calls it power gods. It's egocentric. Egocentric doesn't have to be a bad thing, especially for a young child. Being egocentric, growing beyond magenta is a good thing. Their sense of self is forming from a sense of self that's differentiated out from everybody else. It's called pre-operational, and that needs more breaking down. Second order, self-protective, and the higher part of magic. This stage you can think of in terms of strength, the ability to dominate over others, and you don't necessarily have to be top dog to express your red, but you know where you fit in the hierarchy of strength. And top dog is a great kind of phrase because a wolf pack is sort of a collection of red individuals, and they work together loosely to all get their own red needs met. Red is also the house, you could say, of the mafia. And there's a lot of magenta and red have a lot of superstition. And in a sense, I think mafia, like the Italian, stands for we don't talk about it to some degree. And there's an unspoken rule system within the mafia, and it's largely a hierarchy of who is the strongest. And there's often turf wars and killings, and that space is a little messy, but it actually is a step up from just the tribal magenta. It collects, in a sense, various tribes and forms a larger group. when it's referred to in its group form. The next stage, amber, is the first one where we really see what we call a group centric. From an individual point of view, when they're at an amber stage, they do see their self system in terms of the group. It is concrete operational, meaning that they see things in black and white. It's absolutistic. You can think of religion. Most external religions are black and white. There's one God and only one God. Or you do this rule, you break this rule, you get this consequence. And that's just it. And there's the truth. Third order conformists, people will lose a part of their red power and individuality to conform to the group at amber. Mythic, it's often called mythic because the myths of the past are felt to be literally true. Moses did part the Red Sea. Jesus was born of a virgin. And these myths are not symbolic that Orange would rationalize them to be. They are literally true. And in some ways, this is called conventional. It's kind of like a very conventional place to be in the world. You are finding your role, you're doing your job, you're fitting into the community, you are part of your group. Now, one distinction, while this is a big leap in some ways from the individualistic aspect of red, because you have now a group, you're more than just one person. You see this in nation states. You'll see this in your religion. You'll see this in the military. You'll see this at schools, in the public education. There is our group, our school, our military, and then there are everybody outside that circle of care. So it's what we call group-centric. And that aspect is very important when you're looking at the world and trying to make sense of it. There are many people who love, and this stage is often synonymous with love, but it's love for those in my group, and hate, or at best just not caring about those outside of my group. Red is love for oneself and care for only oneself and fuck everybody else, but amber is love everybody and kill everybody outside my group if needed. The amber and the red stages, once understood, explain a lot of what we see in the news and what we can't quite make sense of. The orange stage, and these all have a time period when they first came online, when the leading edge people were getting into an amber structure or a red structure. And the spans of time are very long. Humanity's history is in some ways unknown to a degree. But it's thousands and thousands of years before magenta started to populate red. But you start to see, you hear about individuals in history, and often they were leading edge, but they were red or amber. Moses, Jesus, you could make a case that they were amber people. Orange, the date for orange we would put around the late 1600s or 1700s, and you can think of modernity, you can think of the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution. All these things ushered in, for the first time, a fairly world-centric stage. Not just my group at Amber, but all groups. And today we'll see this with corporations working together throughout the world. McDonald's is a great orange example. And the words from the other stages: formal, operational, multiplistic, strive, drive, fourth order, conscientious, rational. That's a key word that's used a lot for this stage. It's very logic based, individual, reflexive. And orange is a lot about achieving, and where you might see Amber, you want to, like a basketball team could be amber, but the best star, like a Michael Jordan, could be looking to achieve, but understands including the team base, but then their own stats and their own achievements are the orange world. And this is pretty prevalent today around teenagers, hopefully, and late teens, like high schoolers, and the corporate world is still very orange. And there's a strict hierarchy, but it's based on merit and achievement. Around the 1950s into the 1960s, the problems of the modernity orange stage became apparent. And so there was kind of a stage that was a little bit more, all of them react to the previous stage. Orange saw amber's mythic beliefs and said, well, we're going to test everything. We're going to have science, and we're going to make sure that what we believe is rationally backed up by facts and data. And that changed, that created the steam engine and radically changed the printing press, and things just radically changed because, and astronomy. But some people were killed because they had an orange point of view and that disagreed with the church's amber, concrete truth. Well, around the 1950s and 1960s, the problems of modernity became obvious to some of the leading edge humans, in which we have this green, relativistic, early vision logic, human bond, individualistic, pluralistic. That's another great word for this. There are multiple ways to look at reality, conjunctive. And so there's not just one rational truth. There are many contextual truths, and so you have to define what context you're talking about. And then green also says there's not just one right point of view. There are a multitude of points of view. The problem that happens at green at times is it can be so relativistic that it can say that there is no truth, there is no point of view which you can latch on to, and the hidden part of that is there is no truth that is greatest except my truth, that all truths are relative. So green will still put their point of view on top. They fight very hard against orange, rational modernity. They fight very hard against amber, concrete, group-centered thinking. Although it's now in a version we have in 2025, the green values, it's hard to distinguish between someone who's truly green and someone who is actually a group-centered. Anybody who has the green values is in my group. Anybody who doesn't have the green values is out of my group, and that's actually an amber position, and I point that out in one of the videos. Green always tends to have a love affair with red in some ways, and sometimes the unhealthy one for an individual. Because when someone grows to amber and they grow into orange, they tend to be dipping more into the mind, and they leave out the body and the body drives that red is known for. And so there's kind of a re-owning of that at green. In a good ways, people go back to doing yoga, they work out, but often they let their selfish impulses be elevated to immediate necessity, and because they've left behind their own needs, their individual needs in some ways, as they conform to a group or they tried to achieve what the world wanted them to achieve. So there's a lot of interesting things that can happen for somebody as they go into green. You can get stuck there, partly because it just takes time to go through stages, partly because there's not a lot of examples of anything beyond green to aspire to. And so what I'd like to do with this channel is introduce more and more. There are some teal content out there, but I want to just add to the table, and hopefully people will see a way out if they feel stuck in green. There is something that they can move and grow into that can truly bring back on the red, but integrate the best of the amber, of being part of a group, the best of achieving, the best of being sensitive to others, and even down having a healthy sex drive that's aligned with their values, and in surviving in a very great way. Looking for there's a lot of great orange science about how we should eat, how we should sleep, and so teal doesn't push against these other stages like green does to orange or orange does to green, and so on. That's why on the far end of this image, Ken makes a line. All these stages we've talked about here, what we call first tier, and at the start of teal, we have second tier, and then I wouldn't worry so much about third tier, but there is a major difference between what we see all the way up to green and what we're hoping to see more and more of in teal and turquoise. I've talked that this channel is sort of a teal integrative approach. Some of the researchers call this middle vision logic. Flex flow is a great term. A lot of teal individuals are able to flow with what's happening in a group. Maybe there's an orange and an amber person, so they kind of help mediate the differences that are happening in the conversation. They're flexible, so if they're talking to somebody at red, they don't insist on talking about stage development. They might talk a lot about amber, like, hey, let's work together as a group. Or if they meet an orange individual, they'll stress how the other person is making sense to them, and maybe they can urge them to be a little more sensitive. So teal individuals are very good at flexing and flowing. Autonomous is a good word. That it seems to be that the body truly does. Green does make an attempt to bring the body back online, but it's still largely a higher mind stage. Teal is sometimes called the centauric stage, and that one, it really does the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of these earliest stages. Becomes very important. The healthy version to a teal individual. I would put, just loosely to give you an overview, turquoise would be a late vision logic, a more evolved teal. I often see turquoise as teal individuals hanging out together and working together. So hit me up in the comments. Definitely subscribe. Definitely hit the like button. And if we start having a conversation, we can start to maybe feel into what the turquoise space might be. People have various teal models within themselves, but if they have some capacity for teal, they can find some way to work together. Often, teal can be a bit of an individualistic stage. You're studying a lot. You're trying to systemize all the information that you know, and turquoise is where you start to really join in with others in that goal. The name of the channel is Let's Go Indigo, and it's for me sometimes a bit of just a wish to remind myself that I'd like to be very present. I would put indigo as a very stable presence, physical presence. And Ken gives this third tier, and often he says without a spiritual practice or meditative practice or an ability to recognize and move through states, that's a whole nother topic, part of the integral model, that this third tier really isn't available unless one has a practice, and often those come from the best traditions that have spearheaded into state development. But also, I just want to point out to the viewers that even though we're talking about teal, I could have called Let's Go Teal, but teal, and it really is a teal channel, teal information, a teal project. Teal is the only one that really says, hey, I fit in somewhere in this model. I'm not on top, but I'm here. And Indigo, Let's Go Indigo is a good reminder that perhaps, hey, all of us who are listening, if you're interested in all of this, there is somewhere that's ahead of us. And we don't need to know all about it or know what violet is or ultraviolet or clear light. We don't need to be the most developed humans in the world, but we certainly can strive to be some of the leading edge of most of culture. And I think that's a worthy endeavor, especially in this world that is fragmented and hurting. So we'll do another video where I talk more about the third tier ones perhaps down the road, but I just wanted to kind of get the conversation going about these stages, these shorthand. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope this helps give a little bit more of an overview of the shorthand that I'll use in this channel. And I trust that it fits in with your teal part that is growing, that's showing up in the world. And I'd like to see you show up, and please let me know how that's going. Be well, and I'll see you next time.